It was New Year's Eve, 1979, in a small town in Eastern Europe. The snow had already begun to settle thickly on the ground, blanketing the streets in a silence that felt almost unnatural. The crisp, cold air carried the distant sound of laughter and celebration from the nearby homes. But there was one house, on the outskirts of town, where no one dared to celebrate. It was a large, decaying mansion that had stood for over a century, known locally for its dark history. The locals spoke of strange happenings within its walls, disappearances, eerie noises, and flickering lights at odd hours. But no one had ever dared to investigate, at least not after what happened 2 decades ago. The mansion had once been home to a wealthy family, the Drevniks, who had lived in that house for generations. They were known for their lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle. But one cold New Year's Eve in 1957, something went horribly wrong. The night began like any other. The Drevnik family, including the patriarch Viktor, his wife Helena, and their 2 children, Alexander and Ivana, were hosting a grand celebration. The house was filled with guests, laughter echoing through the corridors and the clinking of glasses as champagne flowed freely. It was a night of joy, or so it seemed. As the clock struck midnight, Victor raised his glass for a toast, but his voice was drowned out by a loud bang from the attic. The entire house fell silent, a cold wave of unease spreading across the room. At first, they thought it was a door slamming in the wind, but the sound came again, louder this time. A low, guttural sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. Victor, concerned, excused himself and made his way toward the attic. He opened the door, the sound of his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet as he climbed the narrow stairs. His breath quickened with every step, his heart pounding. The attic was dark, save for a small candle flickering in the corner. At first, he saw nothing unusual, but then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure standing in the shadows. A woman, dressed in tattered black clothing, her face obscured by long, wet hair. Victor froze. The woman didn't move. She simply stared at him, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "Who are you?" Victor demanded, his voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she let out a low, mournful wail that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. Victor, terrified, backed away, but as he turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind him. The mansion seemed to come alive with strange noises. The walls groaned, the windows rattled, and the temperature dropped sharply. Helena, frantic, rushed up to the attic with a few of the guests, but when they reached the top of the stairs, they found nothing. No woman, no sign of Victor, only the dim candle flickering in the corner, casting long shadows against the walls. The guests searched the entire house that night, but Victor was never found. As the years passed, the Drevnik family was never the same. Helena fell into a deep depression, the children grew distant, and the mansion slowly decayed. Local legends grew around the disappearance, and rumors spread that Victor's spirit had been claimed by the mansion. But it wasn't just Victor who was lost. The mansion itself seemed cursed, as though it had become a vessel for something far darker. In 1979, nearly 2 decades later, a group of thrill-seeking college students decided to spend their New Year's Eve in the old Drevnik Mansion. They had heard the stories, of course, but they were skeptical. Just old tales meant to scare children. They arrived just before midnight, laughing and joking as they entered the decaying building. They didn't think anything was wrong at first. The house seemed empty, eerily silent, except for the faint hum of the wind rattling the windows. But as the clock struck midnight, things began to change. The temperature dropped, the air grew thick, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally across the walls. Then they heard it, a soft whispering, as though someone was calling their names from deep within the house. They turned, expecting to see one of their friends playing a prank, but no one was there. They laughed it off, chalking it up to the wind or an old house settling. But the whispers grew louder, more frantic. The floorboards creaked under unseen footsteps. And then they saw her. In the dim light of their flashlights, they saw a figure in the hallway, dressed in black, her hair hanging in front of her face. She was walking toward them, her eyes empty and lifeless, her mouth moving but no sound coming from it. Panic set in. The group bolted for the door, but as they reached the front entrance, it slammed shut. They were trapped. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of voices, all pleading for help. The walls began to close in on them, the air thick with dread. One by one, they disappeared. Some were found the next morning, wandering the grounds in a state of shock, unable to remember what had happened. Others were never seen again. The mansion remained silent, as though it had swallowed them whole. In the aftermath, it was discovered that the mansion's previous owners, the Drevniks, had all died under mysterious circumstances. Helena was found in her bedroom, frozen in terror, her eyes wide open. Alexander and Ivana had both disappeared, their bodies never found. Victor's disappearance was never explained, but it was said that his spirit still roamed the mansion, waiting for anyone foolish enough to enter. To this day, the Drevnik Mansion stands as a monument to the past, a place where time seems to stand still, and the horrors of that New Year's Eve continue to haunt the land. Those who have dared to visit it report strange occurrences, unexplained noises, cold spots, and glimpses of shadowy figures moving in the corners of their vision. The mansion is no longer just a building. It is a place where the past and present collide, and where the spirits of the lost are forever trapped. And as for the college students, some say they still hear their whispers on the wind, calling out to those who come too close, warning them of the curse that has claimed so many before. On New Year's Eve, the mansion is alive, and the darkness inside is waiting.